Good morning, good day, good evening to everyone out there on the other side. My name is Jesper Olsen, and I'm a co-sale manager here at Firesoft. And I have the pleasure of organizing this webinar and making sure that our presenters are taken well care of here. So I basically want to thank you all for setting aside some of your precious time to listen to what we at Firesoft and Microsoft has to say about Synapse. So I'll get into the agenda right now. So with respect to today's agenda, I'll be going over the house rules very briefly, and then we will go into a general Firesoft introduction about our company philosophy and our sheer numbers with respect to our in-house capabilities as a partner. Then we'll go into the speaker introduction, and then we'll go into the Synapse introduction, followed up with some deep dives into some specific case studies, and then finally a Q&A section where you can ask all the questions that you could ever think of related to Synapse, or maybe even some other questions that you feel that we might be able to respond to. Now, with respect to the house rules, they're really nice and simple. So up to the right of your screen, you have a Q&A feed, and then you basically can ask all the questions that you want, and then we will have two speakers, technically three, but our two expert speakers will be like one will always be silent, and then the other one is speaking. Then they will answer your questions accordingly, and vice versa. The recording so today's webinar is also recorded, and the recording will be available for all attendees here today, and also we'll be posting it later on in on our Firesoft website, as you see down in the right corner. Now, so as I briefly touched upon, there was we have quite a nice guest today, and I'm pleased to present Bob Duffy, who is the president here at Firesoft, and he's going to go through some of Firesoft's history, philosophy, and general capabilities that we have as a partner. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Bob.
Well, thanks, Jesper, and welcome everyone on this fine day. I wanted to just tell you, just a little bit about myself and our company, and give you that background. I've been personally consulting to Microsoft and with Microsoft since way back in 1995 when Windows 95 rolled out. If any of you remember those days, we've been very close with Microsoft throughout those years. And one of the advantages that we have as a company is our corporate offices, headquarters, are actually located on Microsoft's Millennium campus here in Redmond. So we're about as close to Microsoft as you can get. They're literally beneath, on the floor beneath us and around us on campus. This gives us a unique advantage. We get the opportunity to work with Microsoft technologies before they even get released, to the general public. So for Synapse, where we're here to talk about today, definitely that was the case as we implemented Synapse on one of Microsoft's most critical big data streams last year, and then worked with the Synapse product team to tune and enhance some of the features in Synapse to meet some of the use cases that we presented to them. So that's what's given us the expertise that we'll be talking about here today, and telling you, some of the advantages and fine features of the Synapse product. Just a little bit more about us. If you want to move on, Jesper. We've got over 1,500 consultants around the world, global system integrator. As I mentioned, we do a lot of work in the Microsoft cloud, but we're also an enterprise integrator, and we work with companies implementing integrations as well as migrations. So we recently migrated an SAP application stack to Azure for a mid-sized microelectronics manufacturer, for instance. So SAP on Azure is a big thing that's that a lot of companies are looking at doing. We move Oracle apps, PeopleSoft apps, to Azure as well. And then we do a lot of work with Salesforce integration into enterprise apps. So we definitely have enterprise level capabilities across multiple stacks. Next slide. So, as to our Microsoft focus areas, we kind of organize our work and our skill sets internally into three major stacks. The modern work and security, where we're working with M365, Intune, and Autopilot, managing those edge device points and helping companies get up on teams. We have another group that's focused on spinning up Azure environments. We're working with the Azure Arc team. There'll be more coming out on that later this year, in a couple of proof of concepts that we're doing there. Setting up disaster recovery, just doing all of the cloud configuration things. We are a CSP and can host as well, but most of our work is done on our client Azure subscriptions. Then, where we're here today to talk about our applications and data space, where we just see great promise and potential for Synapse, as you'll see today, I think, as well. And I mentioned, some of the other work that we do, on the data side of the platform. So next, just a little bit about our customers. We have, I've just shown a few of them here. We've worked with many clients over the last 20 years. Basically, we have experience working with a lot of large enterprises you see on here, that are as well as medium to small companies. And we do a significant amount of work in the healthcare arena as well, and we'll talk about one of those examples here today. As well as financial services, companies like Berkshire Hathaway, and in the insurance side, Primera, UBS, and others. So there's a good introduction, a little bit to what we do as a company and the kinds of companies we work with out there. So we're going to get it right into the presentation now. Jesper, back over to you to introduce our presenters today.
Mute and everything, but yeah, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. So into our presenters today, I have the distinct pleasure of having two great speakers with me here today. I have Ahmed Sherif, who's a CSA at Microsoft, and we've been working with in most of our Microsoft partnership when it comes to Synapse, absolute excellent specialist. And we have our own director of cloud services at Firesoft, Prasad Paluri. But I'll give the word over to Ahmed. And Ahmed, if you can say a couple of things about yourself and then bring it over to Prasad, and then we can start the presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jesper, for hosting me today as part of our partnership with Firesoft. My name is Ahmed Sharif. As Jesper noted, I am a CSA with the One Commercial Partner team at Microsoft. So my goal is, and one of my main job responsibilities is to help our partners with what they need to become successful, leveraging Azure. And obviously, a lot of what we do right now on Azure is analytics, and that means that we use a lot of Synapse. And it's our partnerships with Firesoft, as Bob spoke about earlier, where we let our partners get access to some of these services that we have early on, and they get to implement them in the field and test them out and tell us, what is missing and what needs to be added onto it. So Firesoft has been one of the leading partners for that, and it's been a privilege to work with them these last few months. So very excited today about talking about how Synapse has sort of evolved and grown over the last couple of cycles, and how it can be used as a tool within your platform and wherever you guys are implementing analytics on your end.
All right, Prasad, over to you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to join the webinar today. I'm Prasad Paluri from Firesoft, managing our cloud services, primarily focusing on Azure data and AI, and also on the Azure infrastructure. Back to you, Ahmed.
All right, I will go ahead and share my screen here. And Jesper, you just let me know if it looks good to you.
Everything looks good on this end. I think you're good to go, man. Take it away.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Microsoft is leveraging Synapse in terms of an analytical platform, and it's sort of you're gonna hear a recurring theme when I'm talking, which is about centralization and keeping everything within a main silo. So analytics and AI, you'll hear every organization, if they haven't already moved towards that digital transformation space, they're on their way there. And one of the main areas that they're focusing on is on analytics as well as AI. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of reporting and a lot of solutions that are built off of analytics and AI that are not reaching production. They're not getting to that phase where they're becoming available to users. They're hitting different roadblocks. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Data silos, data management issues, operational issues. We have folks working within in the same workspace, but they're not even aware of the work that they're doing together. And that leads to a lot of failure from a lack of return on investment for some of these AI and analytics solutions. Most of these workloads are going to fall under one of two main areas. You have sort of your traditional relational data, dealing with traditional data warehouse, where you have your your schema on write, and then you're able to sort of build your traditional BI reporting, data warehouse, data analytics. Then you have your big data, which is a little bit newer. You're dealing with some experimentation. You're not dealing with BI developers so much as you're dealing with data scientists, machine learning engineers. The data is not as structured, schema on read more so, and that's where you have your data lake. Because you have those two dichotomies, you can find that you can create sort of the wild west within a cloud infrastructure. Earlier days, you'd go in and the portal that you're logging into within Azure could be very daunting. And what we find is that people don't even know where to stop, where to put guidance, where to put security monitoring, just the proper housing of resources that you would expect in a sort of a big data analytics workspace. Mm-hmm. Azure now is trying to bring these two worlds together in more of a seamless analytical solution, where you're bringing the best of data warehousing, the best of big data analytics, which allows you to bring in engineering and analysis, data science with data analysts, business intelligence reporting with machine learning models, into this sort of seamless platform where all your work is sort of centralized in a location that can be accessible by everyone. Your database administrators will know who's going in and doing what with where. That's all now sort of becoming, it's not that we're changing anything per se, we're not building out different data lakes or different analytical tools. It's just we're creating the location for them all to be in a seamless landing zone. And so that brings us to Azure Synapse Analytics, which is more of a limitless analytical service that'll give you faster times to get insight into your data, mostly because you know where your data is sitting. You know where your unstructured data is. You're able to understand the workflow of where the different steps of your data is taking. If you're a data scientist, you'll know where to go to get that raw unstructured data. If you want something that's been processed and gone through that data quality analysis, you'll know where to get it from that part, because you see that common and centralized workflow. So we've taken some industry-leading data warehouses and we've taken them to the next level. So Azure SQL Data Warehouse, still there, but has been evolved. Azure Notebooks, still there, but now they've become evolved, leveraging the best of Spark, leveraging the best of SQL, allowing you to increase your scale up and scale out as well. So that limitless scaling is very important. Getting that powerful insights very key right away. Within that unified experience as well, you no longer have that wild, wild west with that level of security because you still have everything centralized in a subscription process that has a workspace that is user-friendly and accessible, visual for those who need to see what's going on to understand what's being done. So the first part I want to focus on is on the limitless scale. We're dealing with having the ability to scale up, scale out. So you're able to add more compute. You're able to leverage multiple distributed compute, and really with just a click of a button. You can just say, you want to have certain levels of cores available to you. You want to be able to, if you're building some type of a Spark cluster, be able to access and what's the minimum number of nodes, maximum number of nodes. So not just you're keeping track of the compute you have that's available, you're also able to keep track of the costs. So your price is not going to be skyrocketed by leveraging services that you don't need. And that gives us the ability to say that, hey, you can get great performance at less total percent of the cost that you might be getting from other providers, whether you're going with Redshift, Snowflake, BigQuery, and so on and so forth. The next thing is the powerful insights. We already had one of the best BI tools out there in Power BI, and the ability to leverage notebooks within data science, Azure notebooks. Now you're able to combine those two together. You can do Power BI inside of the analytics workspace. You can connect it to the services there. So that brings the business user with Power BI to the same location where you'll have the data scientist who's coding and is running some models trying to understand parameters that are statistically significant. It brings that in a synergy between different workloads all together. And that allows you to create a nice end-to-end analytic platform. So you're able to service those who just need very high-level insights and those who really want to dig deep into one specific area and therefore need to have access to a lot more data for a lot more small of a niche and maybe slice of data. Again, back to zero management and maintenance, because that stuff can be controlled by the admin and be able to allocate the resources needed. So you're not giving somebody too much power to go in there and create and destroy and erase. But at the same time, you're not having somebody come back to you every 5 minutes to saying, hey, you gave me this level of detail, but I need that next level and next level. And so it doesn't become sort of a guessing game. And finally, the last part that I wanted to talk about is the level of security and features. This is where I find is the most value added for what you get with Synapse at really no extra cost, because you're getting now the ability to, because you're able to see everything that's being provisioned for you, you're able to understand day by day what your costs are going to be. And therefore you can then project how much your monthly costs are going to be and your quarterly costs and then your annual costs. And at any point in time, you're able to scale down or scale up based on what's needed, depending if it's a seasonal demand, if you're in that type of business, retail, or if you're in the healthcare industry where you're dealing with certain parts of the year where you're getting a lot more visibility, a lot more use out of your services, and therefore you need to be able to scale up for a short period of time. All that's available to you, and all that can be provisioned with really just a click of a few buttons. In the Q&A, I'd also like to hear from some of the different industries that are looking to leverage this and where they are right now, because I think this can be very, very useful to you. So this brings us sort of to where that synergy occurs. You have that ecosystem that is going to bring the best of Power BI for reporting and analytics and data warehousing and business intelligence, along with that ecosystem that we have for Azure Machine Learning, where we're building our SDKs to do model versioning, endpoint versioning, model containerizations, and creating those APIs. They can all be brought into the Azure Synapse Analytics Suite. So if you've already been developing within Azure Machine Learning, great. You don't have to change any of your work. You can just have that incorporated into Synapse. You already have a bunch of reports built in Power BI. Great, you don't have to rebuild anything. You can have those incorporated into Azure Synapse. And this allows you to really bring in that average return on investment a lot higher than what we were seeing earlier on in that presentation, where we were able to see that a lot of those AI and analytics projects were failing and never really reaching their customer satisfaction needs. So you have increased customer satisfaction, faster time to insights, and lower total cost of ownership, because you don't have to worry about over provisioning services on Azure. Firesoft has had the ability to work with several customers leveraging Synapse, and here are just some of the customers that we have on Azure right now that are leveraging Synapse in some capacity or another. So you can see this is not, even though it's really gone live very recently, all the parts have been there for a while. We have so many of our customers now leveraging Synapse for bringing together many of their services into that seamless, centralized portfolio on Azure. And those range from energy sector to finance to healthcare, you name it. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to my colleague today, Prasad, to talk a little bit about the data migration strategy that they have within Firesoft.
Thank you, Ahmed. Jasper, can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we're seeing it.
Okay, give me a second.
I'm looking at case studies right now. So
yeah, sure. So before I jump onto the case studies, I would like to kind of talk about our Firesoft data modernization strategy. So today I'll be walking through, like, every customer we work with in the enterprise or in SMB. Every customer have different digital landscape. They have different data issues. They have different landscape of data. Either it can be structured, semi-structured, or unstructured data. So today I'll be walking through like a couple of data modernization strategy that we work with customers and partners in terms of modernizing their data platform. So if you look at our data modernization strategy, we broadly classify them into two categories. Either some customers come with greenfield scenario where we see a lot of customers with unstructured data and they want to combine their existing SQL or DW data coming, which is in-house, and then combine those two together and provide some analytics on top of that. And then we are also working with multiple customers where they want to take the data into the cloud, where they want to migrate from their data centers into the Azure cloud. And we broadly classify them into one of those scenarios. Either we are doing a rehost, which is more lift and shift of their infrastructure into the cloud, or we might do a replatform where we take the data from one software and without much code changes, without changing any underlying infrastructure, we move the data from one platform, either upgrading SQL or moving the data from SQL into Synapse, into the SQL pools. And sometimes we also have to rewrite a refactor because as part of data modernization, there is always things change at a very rapid phase. They are generating, the data is growing at a very rapid phase. So we have to do some rewriting and decoupling of application without major re-architect. And in some cases, we reimagine and re-architect, and those are like major projects. In terms of our experience with Synapse, we have done few greenfield scenarios, and we are also doing migrate. And most of our migrate scenarios have been more, let's first lift and shift because of their scale issues. They cannot scale because of their data growing at a very faster rate. And then once we rehost, then we look at how to re-platform in terms of bringing the ROI of Azure Synapse and also bringing more data governance through Synapse by having those built-in security that are built in within the Azure Synapse framework. So let me jump onto a few case studies so I can kind of explain the power of Synapse, what we learned, and I would like to share some of that information. As I said, like I'm going to take one of the scenario that we worked with Microsoft. That's a large data. It's a new application we developed in parallel to the current production application, where there is thousands of terabytes of data that are being stored, and the ingestions are coming in at a very rapid phase. We are looking at around 2.4 terabytes of data being ingested every 4 hours. And the data is supposed to be provided to the customers through an API, and it has to go through a lot of processing in data lake, and it took a lot of latency to get the data to the customers. So that case study is more about how Synapse Spark pool helped us to accelerate the time to insights and bring that value to the customer. And we also implemented hyperspace indexing that kind of made the queries run much faster. I'll be sharing some data on that as well. And then 2 more case studies, migration. These are like typical industry cases where they have multiple data repositories spread across their ecosystem. Each team has built their own repository or have been building it for multiple years. And then we are helping them to move those resources into the cloud and also bring in Synapse as well. And then there is one healthcare case study as well, which I'll be talking about. So let me jump on to the first case study, which is more with Microsoft. We call the Cloud Cost Management team. As you know, all the Azure resources that we use kind of raises events, and those are very unstructured data. The events keep coming at every second, and we have to feed that data and do analytics on top of that. There was some latency on how quickly customers can access that usage data, depending on the segment of users, whether they are EA or MS, Web Direct or CSP customers. So there was like the process was happening in 4-hour batches, and it has to go through multiple data lakes. So Microsoft wanted to experiment on Synapse to see how they can reduce the latency by also taking the power of Synapse and trying to bring the Spark into Synapse and see how Synapse handles the big data. So let me quickly walk through their architecture, where the previous system, the usage data was coming in, and then it goes through multiple Spark jobs, and then they persist the data into the data lake. And then there were different teams that were associated there. There was an acquisition team, there was a data transformation team, and then there was a data reporting team, and everybody had to keep their own repository of data. So this was all siloed, like the data, there were multiple copies of the data lake within the organization. So one of the important challenge we took up was how do we reduce that overhead of not keeping multiple data lakes within each team, and also having the developers focus more on the code and less on the scale issue of the infrastructure, the data governance of the infrastructure. So we wanted to kind of one of the objective was to kind of take away where developers and data engineers and the data scientists and the data stewards, they were primarily focusing on the business case rather than on the infrastructure case. So that was one of the key aspect of this work, which we piloted and we are taking into production now. So here is kind of a quick snapshot of what amount of data we are looking at. We are looking at around, like, it depends on the time of the day, where we are feeding somewhere between 300 GB to 2.4 terabytes of data. So what we did is we replaced their multiple data platforms that were available into feeding that data into Synapse, where we do all the process in the Synapse Spark, which is all kept in the in-memory, where all the warm and hard data is kept in the in-memory, and then some of the data which has to be persisted will be moved into the SQL pool for reporting. We are looking at somewhere Synapse performed excellent. We looked at around 10 seconds to load. Even it was linearly scaling. We are looking at around 10 seconds to 20 seconds to load somewhere around 300 GB to 2.4 terabytes of data. That was a huge leap in reducing the latency there. And we did another advancement here, where they previously were using Synapse for a batch processing, where the data transformation happens and they persist the data and the customers can report on it. But we were able to take Synapse and parallelly load the data and also parallelly read the data within like 15 seconds, where we were switching the views where customers can query the data instantaneously from Synapse. where it was a real-time system where customers can call through an API and they were able to get the data. One other interesting facts about indexing was it took a little while to index. It was taking 10 seconds to load, but it took 15 seconds to index. But the benefit we got was instead of taking 10 seconds to 10 minutes to read a large amount of data like 500 MB or multiple GBs of data, it took around like 500 milliseconds to read around like 500 MB of data and persist it into a blob storage so that the blob can be sent to the customer for the read operation. So this was we were able to make huge enhancements to their pipeline, and we are trying to make Synapse as their single data platform, single place of the truth of the data, where they can store the data and process it and run all the machine learning algorithms on top of that. So how did we implement it? Yeah, there were separate pipelines serving concurrent refresh views as a new batch arrives, and we loaded the data in memory and indexed it in the background. And we also created a view on the post data processing. And as the new data was coming in, we were processing that in the background. So what were the benefits? Yeah, we instead of going through multiple Azure services like HT Insight Spark, Azure Data Warehouse, and going through multiple platforms and ADF going through another Azure Data Factory, we were able to reduce all the services and do everything within the Synapse Studio. And Synapse was very promising. It was able to handle like large amount of incoming data with high resilience and reliability there. And we were also able to reduce the complexity of having teams centralized within the Synapse platform there. And it also had this auto scaling that gives more ROI. So the clusters are not running and you're not paying for what is not being processed in the backend. So you don't need to worry about the clusters, getting the clusters up and running and shutting down those clusters. And then the ETL was all simplified through Synapse data pipelines. They have 90 plus connectors that can connect to any type of your data sources, from SAP to like any other third-party databases, or also into the other clouds. So we also experimented some of the ML jobs within Synapse where we are able to predict the usage, and it was easy to integrate our existing ML jobs and validate that. And as Ahmed said, there was the existing Power BI. We were able to connect it quickly so that there was no rewrite that was needed to connect the Power BI into the Synapse. It was a little bit cost effective compared to running the same solution on HT Insight for us. So the next use case is on the manufacturing. This is where the amount of data was not huge, but the challenge was then they had too many repositories, like they had too many departments. Each department owned a version of SQL Server or keeping the data on SAP. Some of the data was in SAP, some of the data was in PeopleSoft, Oracle, some of the data was in SharePoint and unstructured files. They had ton of, there were like 150 jobs that has to be migrated. And then they had to spend on paying for the connectors to like trying to bring SAP data into Azure and all that. So we were looking at multiple aspects here. One of the challenge for them was we did evaluate multiple platforms where to migrate this, and there was not a less risky, low cost option available. And there was and Synapse turned out to be the best option in terms of migrating their existing SSIS job with the minimal rewrite into their stored procedures and inline queries and trying to migrate some of that. And then the team wanted to do more predictive analytics, which was not possible for them. And we are now at a point where we are trying to integrate ML and do some predictive analytics on top of the data. So the previous system was primarily on SAP, BW HANA, and some of that, as I mentioned, they were. So first thing we did was rehost their platform. We lift and shifted their SQL Server into the cloud so that they can have this business continuity without dealing with all the scale issues. And we were able to connect the Power BI into the Azure cloud, and they were able to continue. The next progression of that was trying to replace those VMs with Synapse, so they don't need to worry about maintaining those VMs on the cloud, and it becomes very cost effective for them, and they're paying for what they are using within Synapse. That kind of reduce the cost for them by around 35 to 40% in terms of instead of paying for the VMs and getting onto the Synapse here. If you look at it, we are able to kind of replace their Affinity. They were able to get away from their SAP connectors and then directly use the Synapse pipelines to ingest the data, and we were able to put it into multiple staging tables. We were getting snapshot data, and then we were merging it into the main tables, and there were like more unstructured data coming in from text files and other formats. So again, we brought that into the Azure Data Lake, and from there we were able to connect directly into the Synapse SQL pool and Spark pool to query the data, and ability to kind of transform that and provide an integrated report. So when we do the assessment, I think this is something that I wanted to share. We had to go through like multiple aspects before we migrate. So we had to see how many data sources they have and how they integrated to it. And we had to look at their ETL orchestration. We had to look at every job. And then we did some static analysis on that to see like where the failure points are in terms of migrating it into Synapse. Based on our understanding of what works within Synapse or not. And then scheduling of the ETL job has to be converted into more triggers. And then we brought in the disaster recovery story, and the monitoring was well integrated, security was well integrated into Synapse, that they don't need to buy another third-party tool or get into Azure Monitor to monitor their day-to-day data operations and all that. So the performance was really good, and here are some of the findings here. So the third use case, it's more on the healthcare side. They again had like multiple source of information. They were using a lot of third-party systems like Point Click Care, Paylocity, AOD. Like they were using multiple systems, and they had to the data was residing on different external systems. So one of the challenge was to kind of reduce that complexity and see how we can bring the data and bring it into the cloud and into one data platform, and also improve the resiliency of if the third-party system is down, how do you bring in more resiliency? That was one of the challenge that we addressed for the customer there. Here, if you look at it, there were multiple systems. The first thing we did was more lift and shift, where we rehosted their application on Azure as lift and shifting their SQL and connecting to SSRS reports. And later we were able to kind of migrate that within the Azure cloud into Synapse, where we were able to kind of combine all those staging tables and integrate all the SSIS jobs into data pipelines and bring their data into analytical DW and reporting staging tables and connect the Power BI instead of using the SSRS report. So this is one of the great use cases there. So one of the benefit was Synapse was offering like greater flexibility and scalability, and we were able to improve the resiliency into the architecture, build more fault tolerance. And again, we were able to reduce their cost of not running those infrastructures on their data centers and on Azure cloud by taking it into the Azure cloud. Yeah, so a final summarization here. Yeah, so what we learned in the greenfield from Microsoft, Synapse is capable of handling large volume of data. We were able to process like terabytes of data, load them within 10 to 20 seconds. It was awesome. And then we were able to take advantage of hyperspace indexing for running the queries at a very high speed. Like we are able to get 500 MB of data within like 500 milliseconds, and we transformed kind of a monolithic Spark jobs into more real time, where we can do concurrent processing, where ingestion and processing happens at the same time. And then on the migrate scenario, we took them through the cloud journey of migrate them, rehost them, and then re-platform them into Synapse. Because we had a lot of learnings. Each company's verticals had their own challenge, and we found that Synapse fits very well in terms of addressing some of the issues and have that ability to provide data analytics on top of it. So from Firesoft, we have how we can engage. We do like one-day workshop, we do assessments, we do free assessments, and then we also do like 1 week pilot of POC. We get Microsoft funds to run some of this effort. So if any of you are interested, you can put it on the chat. We'll be happy to kind of pilot Synapse to see if Synapse is a viable option for you and doing a quick feasibility study to see if Synapse is a solution that kind of meets your requirements. And there is a fireside Synapse fireside chat coming in on February 11th. That's going to be more technical. If any of your technical members want to join, that's going to be meeting me and Ahmed and also few of our senior developers and data architects. So where we will deep dive into our architecture and you can ask more questions on our learnings here.
Yeah, I want to emphasize to everyone that that fireside chat that we posted up is going to be a really good follow-on session to this, as we'll be able to spend a little more time kind of getting into the some of those architecture slides that we've seen, and as well want to make sure that everyone knows that these assessments that we offer and the workshop up front. These are a great way to kind of, if there's interest, to just kind of kick the tires. What would Synapse look like in my environment? What benefits could I maybe drive out of that? We'll help you put those together, right? So that you've got an understanding internally, what we could go after, right? What are some of the things that are in your infrastructure today that are make it cumbersome to get the analytics you want, on a very timely basis. That we've overviewed a lot of the benefits of Synapse. It's a major step forward in analytic and cloud technology on the data side. It's just chock full of lots of benefits, right? But how do those benefits map to exactly what you're doing in your organization? Every customer we work with kind of takes a different piece of it, a different element of it that really makes a big difference for them. In some cases, it's bringing that governance, security, and that model in over the data and allowing more people to be able to work across the silos. In other cases, people are really focused on the performance aspect and the performance improvement that they can see going against this big data. It has incredible performance characteristics against very large data sources, as we've shown here. That was one of the things that we drove as a real benefit out of the work that we did at Microsoft on that Azure usage data repository. So there's something in it for everyone. The question is, what's in it for you, right? And that's what these assessments and workshops can kind of ferret out. And as Prasad said, we've got funding for those things. So these are very easy to launch and go do. Just let us know, and we'll connect you up and get something scheduled. You want to go into Q&A now, Jesper?
Yeah, let's take it into Q&A because our feed is starting to blow up a little bit. So that's all well and good. So I posted the first question. All of you guys out there also welcome to reply to it in the main feed. But like the first question we have was like, I know that Synapse touts improved performance, and what kind of performance improvements have you seen? And did you have to do anything specific to tune that specific performance? I don't know if it's Prasad or Ahmed who wants to grab that ball specifically.
Prasad, why don't you talk about
sure.
that? Yeah.
In terms of Azure Synapse, one of the key improvements we saw was have that ability to bring in huge amount of data and also do the hyperspace indexing. Like when we did the hyperspace indexing, as I said, we were able to reduce the overall time of processing somewhere from 4 hours to 15 minutes. That we are able to do with the amount of the kind of architecture we are able to build on top of Azure Synapse that will allow us to do parallel processing and create like multiple pipelines and have the in-memory data, scale it into 200 nodes, and do all the pre-processing there. And then on top of that, having this hyperspace indexing was we run around 100 concurrent queries on the in-memory data. So typically in a batch process where in a Spark job, you are running all the transformation and then you store it into a repository and then you're firing some queries on top of a data lake, or you're firing it into the Synapse in-memory view, Spark view. So what we did was we were able to build concurrent, like 100 concurrent queries that can be run on your hundreds of terabytes of data. So where we are talking about 10 queries per second, like we are able to serve 10 queries per second with the kind of architecture we have built on top of Synapse. And that was enabled by bringing in the hyperspace indexing on top of it. So where we can do more reads much faster, it made the whole process much efficient rather than kind of going through a 4-hour process. Now it's becoming a 15 minutes process. That's a huge leap of getting it. So that's our experience. And in terms of the other migration we did with the other industry verticals, having Synapse, we can automatically scale our infrastructure. We can get into more nodes. The time to query was much faster compared to what we already have. And then we do some tuning based on what on the SQL pool, on the dedicated SQL pool, based on the tables that we are bringing in from the staging environment. So anything that you want to add, Ahmed?
No, I think that you covered that pretty well. I mean, this is more of an area of expertise on your end because you work more with them.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
One question I was going to ask you is, or just maybe you can help clarify this because I saw this in some of the questions. What are some of the ways that if somebody had, let's say if they wanted to get started really quickly, they had some data in SQL Server on premise, like what would be some of the options to get that data quickly into Synapse? What would be like 2 or 3 ways that, or the recommended way to get that into Synapse so they could start leveraging it right away? Let's say they just wanted to do this tomorrow.
Sure. So there are multiple ways to address this depending on whether the enterprise or SMB, they want to connect the cloud directly into the SQL Server. What we have seen is some of the companies don't want to directly connect Synapse into their SQL Server. So they they extract the files and drop it into a storage, and then we try to pick the account from storage. Or if they already have the infrastructure, hybrid infrastructure that is already built, then we will be able to connect the pipelines directly into their SQL Server and pull the data from their SQL Server directly into Synapse. That's the easiest way to do, but it depends on where they are in terms of their cloud journey and what is their security, their IT governance and security security principles, or whatever they have their policies are. So most of the time, the IT runs the how they want to run the infrastructure and network. Sometimes it's not easy, like even tapping into one of the use cases, like SAP has this connector directly into SAP, which is kind of run on their on-prem right now. But to open those ports in SAP, we had to work with the IT. It takes a long cycle. So the quick win we do is like, okay, the team that owns SAP, they can extract the data using the jobs that are available in SAP, so that we can take the data that is extracted and then try to port it into migrate it into the through Azure Migrate. We migrate the data into Azure, and then we try to restore it into this Azure Synapse there. So it depends.
Is that a big market that you're seeing there? A lot of SAP customers who are maybe SAP ERP, SAP Business Objects, SAP HANA, SAP BW that are just looking to push extracts to Azure Synapse? Is that something that you're seeing a lot of?
Yeah, we work with a couple of customers. The need of the hour for them is SAP has their reporting system, but it only reports on what the data is in SAP. But the hour of the need is like they want to combine this data from different sources and then build this big data platform and build analytics on top of that. As you initially said, they were okay with having the silo reports, and now they are at a point where they want to combine data and then create this analytics on top of that that gives them more insightful data on how they should run their business and where they can optimize things on their end, and then also do a lot of predictive things. So we are seeing like a lot of customers trying to bring those structured and unstructured data together. And one of the thing that the first question I asked them is, one of the first question sorry is one of the first question we asked on the SAP side is SAP has BW reporting, and how does it compare with Power BI? So they felt like Power BI is much richer in terms of getting the reports. Like they were trying to avoid this path of migrating this data and all that, but the Power BI gives them the more ability for providing more analytics compared to what SAP provides. And SAP reporting was very siloed compared to how they can bring the data, unify the data, and provide richer reports.
And SAP also, a lot of their BW reporting is done in something called BEX, which is Excel based. So for them, going from Excel reporting to Power BI is a natural next step. You know, a natural in their BI reporting process. So for them, it's very seamless process for them. So I could definitely see the interest in using something like Power BI for reporting versus what they were kind of getting before, which is more tabular, you know, Excel spreadsheets, which, you know, will only get you so far in terms of insights. So that's good to know, and I'm not surprised to hear that a lot of SAP is moving in that direction. I apologize, Jasper, we kind of hijacked that, but feel free to continue on with the Q&A. Or if you have
on that line, Ahmed, how about customers that maybe have Tableau as their kind of enterprise analytics reporting tool? How does Synapse play with a tool like that?
So that's a great question too, and what we always say is with Tableau and Synapse, or Tableau in general, Microsoft has obviously Power BI, and we have Synapse, and we have Tableau as a you know, a competitor, right? But we don't really look at Tableau that way as a competitor, because ultimately the visualization that you guys want, that our customers and partners want to work with, it's a personal taste. So we want to make that, we don't want to tell you what to use to work with. So we do have connectors within Synapse that will basically take your SQL query data and basically push it to your Tableau enterprise accounts, and then you can sort of visualize those tables and those views that you've created using Synapse through Tableau. So if Tableau is the way you want to sort of show your analytics to your end users, by all means, you can leverage everything within Synapse, and then rather than leveraging Power BI, you can have those views and those queries that go in there, hitting those Tableau desktop connectors. And also you can leverage Tableau Enterprise as well as sort of your semantic layer as well for doing some of those reports. So we definitely we like to say we play well with Tableau, and a lot of our customers. I'll tell you guys a secret, really, and you can see we basically give Power BI almost free to a lot of our users. So for us, the investment is on the Azure side, not so much on the visualization side. So we're happy to let customers use Tableau or even other. I mean, I've worked with some of our partners that leverage Qlik and Typical as well. So they still, a lot of them come back and still use Power BI too. So it's one of those things where, you know, some industries may find it a lot more. Like if you're coming from SAP BW, you might find Power BI a natural successor. But if you're coming from like an SAP Business Objects, where you're using for that kind of reporting. We've seen a lot of customers go from business objects to Tableau because that was more of a natural progression. So that's something that's out there that we don't want to limit to your we don't want that to be the limiting factor for you to leverage Azure Synapse.
Got it. How about on the whole other side of the spectrum? On the ingestion side, everyone's invested a lot of money in that front end and ETL processing. They've used various tools. Sometimes SSES, others as well. What does it look like typically, Prasad, maybe for you, on the front end of this, as customers are looking at, bringing their data now onto Synapse? Will all that need to be redeveloped, or will you be able to reuse, much of what's there today?
That's a very good question, Bob. So one of the challenges that customers have is all their the processing, data transformation, like the ETL, as you mentioned, right? Ingestion, all that code resides in SSIS integration services. So migrating that into Azure Synapse has a little bit of learning curve. That's where we try to kind of learn from the experience from partners, and we are trying to build kind of static tools and kind of a migration path where we can easily take and migrate. I would say, with our experience working with multiple customers, we would be able to take around 90% of their existing queries and stored procedures and migrate it to Synapse without much rewrite there. If they've already migrated and moved to Azure Data Factory and they've leveraged ADW or other like Azure SQL, then it's kind of apples to apples there, where they can easily bring those pipelines directly into Synapse pipelines without much rewrite. But there is a migration path for customers who are bringing the ETL from SSIS. That's where we can help partners to kind of quickly assess how much time it's going to take for them to move into pipelines, in understanding where the risk is and where the conversion needs to happen. But most of the time, we are not doing a lot of business rewrite. It's more like trying to make sure Synapse is kind of the code that they have works in Synapse, and they will be able to take that code and run it in Synapse.
And we try to create general templates now within Data Factory inside of Synapse to sort of help you, sort of guide you through that wave, and say if you're coming from, trying to push data from SQL Server database, how you would do it, versus pushing data from a text file on-prem or a text file sitting in a data lake store from one environment to another. So there are a lot of connectors that are already in place that will make that process a less, more visually appealing, so that you're not sitting there and thinking you have to write a lot of code or do a lot of refactoring. We try to make that, we want to make it as easily as possible for you to bring data onto Azure.
Awesome. And super good Q&A, fantastic discussion. You touched upon a lot of the questions that we got in the feed as well, and then went above and beyond. So thank you so very much, because one question led to another, and all of a sudden we're out of time. So I just want to say thank you to all the speakers that we had here today, and then also to our audience out there. And I'll post, just as a final remark here, I'll make sure to put in my email address for Firesoft. If you have any questions or anything related to any of this, then I can connect you to the right people. If you want to learn more about some of the assessments, some of the POCs, what's involved, then I will connect you guys accordingly. And yeah, I want to basically thank each and every one of you for pitching in here. I think we got a good discussion, and then furthermore, make sure to attend the Fireside chat on February 11th. So it's going to be a little bit less formal than this particular setting. So you're also able to engage with our speakers and just to have a conversation about some of the paradigms that you're facing in this general area. So we're looking very much forward to that and hope you'll attend. But without much further ado, thank you so very much, and we'll shut down on this end.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.